Hi, and welcome to this presentation on the 2026 Cultural Access Priority Area Projects Funding Round. My name is Michael Huxley and I work at Create New South Wales as the Senior Lead for Arts and Cultural Organisations. This presentation, which runs about 20 minutes, has been developed to assist you with your application and will cover the purpose of the Cultural Access Round, the key strategic priority areas for the Arts and Cultural Funding Program, the key dates and funding criteria, who is eligible, the assessment criteria and how the questions in the application form can help you address the criteria, and finally some general tips on completing your application and where you can get some extra support if necessary. Before we move on, I'd like to acknowledge that wherever we are today, we're on Aboriginal land, and I pay my respects to the First Nations people who may be watching, as well as our First Nations colleagues here at Create New South Wales. I'd also like to acknowledge and give thanks for the First Nations care of our lands, waters and air in this place we now call New South Wales. Cultural Access Funding Program supports the development and delivery of arts and cultural projects by individuals and groups who identify with or have a project that will deliver outcomes to one of the priority areas shown on the right-hand side of the screen. It also supports projects by organisations that might be led by or deliver arts and cultural activities for the identified priority communities. Please note there are 3 other project funding streams that may be suited to your project in this round. Creative Nations for First Nations-led organisations and individuals. Next Steps for individuals seeking funding for a planned program of professional development. And Creative Steps for individuals and groups to develop or present new work. You can find additional information about those programs on the resources page and the funding information pages of the Create New South Wales website. To be successful in the Cultural Access Round, your application must demonstrate that it delivers arts and cultural outcome for at least one of the identified priority areas and/or is led by artists and arts workers who identify with one of the priority areas. Your project must clearly demonstrate the arts and cultural activity at its heart and the direct benefits to New South Wales artists, arts and cultural workers, New South Wales communities and/or New South Wales audiences. There are 6 priority areas for the Arts and Cultural Funding Program, and you can find full definition and information on each of these in the Arts and Cultural Funding Program glossary, but here's a quick rundown. First Nations Stories and Communities is about amplifying the central role of First Nations in our arts and cultural ecology in New South Wales. Broad and inclusive communities and content refers to the wide diversity of New South Wales people. So this may include First Nations communities, people of non-English speaking background, those from culturally and linguistically diverse communities, and those who identify as part of the LGBTQIA+ community. It can also refer to the unique communities in our regions and in our urban environments. Broad and inclusive content refers to the wide range of artistic practice and form, from traditional art forms to those that are new and experimental. Access and equity refers to the inclusion of people with disability or who are deaf. When considering equity, you might wish to consider areas of accessibility such as physical, financial, economic and social access, and to ensure there is as few barriers as possible for engagement with your project, either by the artists or by the audience. Create New South Wales separates the state into Sydney, Western Sydney and regional New South Wales. Western Sydney is defined as the 13 local government areas bounded by the Hill Shire to the north, Wallandilly Shire to the south, Blue Mountain City to the west and the city of Canterbury Bankstown to the east. Regional New South Wales is defined as the areas outside Greater Sydney. The final priority area is the next generation of creatives and audiences, and it includes young people aged between 18 to 25, as well as emerging artists and the arts and cultural workers who are generally in the first 5 years of their creative practice or profession, regardless of their age. The purpose of the Cultural Access Program is to enable the development, creation and presentation of work that is designed, led by artists and arts workers who identify with one of the priority areas and/or support a community included in one of the priority areas. To increase equitable access to arts and cultural experiences and support access to resources and expertise for artists and arts and cultural workers to grow their careers. To provide capacity building opportunities for organisations and to strengthen the diversity of cultural leadership within the New South Wales arts and cultural ecosystem. To increase the viability of work developed to and created for and by prioritised New South Wales artists, arts and cultural workers and audiences. To strengthen the creative ecosystem through collaborations and partnerships, and finally to contribute to the personal and community well-being and economic development. Applications for the next round of cultural access will open on the 13th of April and will close on Monday 25 May at 2 p.m. Funding is available for projects that commence on or after 1 September 2026 and the project needs to be completed by 31 December 2027. There is only one round of arts and cultural project funding in 2026, so if you're planning a project that will be delivered after 1 September 26, you should make an application into this round. Individuals and groups can apply for between $10,000 and $75,000, and organisations can apply from $20,000 up to $100,000. Remember, as an individual applicant, you may wish to consider using a funds administrator or auspicer to help you manage the financial side of your grant. Create New South Wales does not fund 100% of the project. You must contribute at least 10% of the total income and your budget must break even. Your contribution can be cash from other grants, income from box office or fees, or the provision of in-kind support such as a venue for free. And just a reminder that if, as an organisation, you're already in receipt of multi-year funding, you are not eligible to apply for this funding round. You can, however, auspice an individual or group. To be eligible to apply, you must be one of the following types of applicants, so individual, a group, or an organisation. As an individual, you must be 18 years or above at the time of application and you must currently be living in New South Wales and have done so for a minimum of 12 months. As a group or another entity that don't have a legal status, such as, that are not a company or an association, all members of your group must be 18 years or above at the time of application, and the majority of members must have been living in New South Wales for at least the last 12 months. As an organisation with legal status, so including companies, formal partnerships, association, local government authorities, you can be set up as either a not-for-profit entity or a for-profit entity. If you are a local government authority, you must be a distinct business unit that is based in New South Wales. Other eligibility requirements to remember include that you can only make one application across this project funding round. This means you can only apply to one of the following: Next Steps, Creative Nations, or Cultural Access. You must clearly demonstrate how your project addresses or is led by at least one of the strategic priority areas. Your budget must break even and you must contribute income of at least 10% of your total expenses in cash or in kind. It is important to remember that your application is assessed against the 3 assessment criteria for this program. Each criteria makes up a percentage of your total score, and they are the idea at 40% of your score, diversity, participation and connection to place at 30% of your score, and planning, expertise and financial management for the remaining 30% of your score. The questions in the application form are designed to help you address each of the criteria. And it's a good idea to remind yourself when you're answering the question, am I also addressing the criteria? So let's start with the first one, the idea. The first criteria is idea, and it's worth 40% of your score. You can see on the right the kind of things that the assessors will be looking for in your idea for you to articulate. In your answer to question 1, you can describe what you want to do, why you want to do it, and what you expect the result to be. You can start by describing your project, clearly summarizing the activity as well as its aims and purposes. Be clear and specific. Use examples and evidence where you can. Things to think about include, why is the project important to me or the community I'm serving or the art form? What impacts or benefits will it have for the artists, for the arts and cultural workers, for the community, and or for the audience? You can think about maybe what will have changed or what you'd like to have changed by the end of the project. What might be the impact on the career or the skills of those involved? Who is this project for? Which of the priority areas is it addressing? And does it address the scope and scale of the activity? And does that offer value for money when compared for the amount requested? Remember that the purpose of the cultural access funding is to support arts and cultural activities that are designed, led by, or significantly support New South Wales artists and audiences from the strategic priority area communities. So the strongest applications will articulate the strengths of their project and the impact on at least one of the priority areas through their application. And remember, it's better to address one priority area with a well-designed project than claim to address them all. This is where being detailed and being specific in your application will really help. There are 2 questions to help you address criteria 2. Question 2, who the project is for and who will benefit from it. For this grant, your project must be led by or significantly support and deliver activity for at least one of the strategic priority areas. In answering question 2, you may wish to consider the following. Which of the 6 priority areas is your project most impactful? Who will benefit? For example, artists, communities, or audiences? What results do you want to see at the completion of your project? What will have changed by the end of the project? For example, will there be increased access or increased participation in arts and cultural experiences? In answering question 3, you should explain why the proposed location is important. You may wish to consider the following. Where will the project take place and the importance to the community of where it is happening? Why did you choose this location or these locations if your project happens in more than one place? Have you engaged with the local community and do they support the activity? In this context, place refers to a specific location or environment that holds personal, emotional, spiritual, or cultural significance or importance to a non-First Nations individual or community. If your project does engage with or is led by First Nations people, you should outline how you are connecting with First Nations communities. What connections have you already established? How do you understand and use the protocols for First Nation engagement and Indigenous Cultural Intellectual Property, or ACFP? You can find additional information about the connection to place statement from a link in the guidelines or on the Create New South website, or you can Google connection to place statement Create New South Wales. And just a reminder that if you are successful and your project engages with First Nations communities, you may be asked to provide a cultural art form affirmation statement and or your approach to Aboriginal protocols and ACFP. The third assessment criteria is planning, experience, and financial management, and it makes up 30% of your score. Your project budget and your response to these 2 questions will help you address this criteria. In this section of your application, you can show your project planning, who will be involved, and how you will manage any risks, including financial risks or changes to personnel. Question 4 is about planning. And so you should outline what activities you will undertake to deliver the results that you had described in the ideas section back in question 1. You might like to consider a timeline for the delivery of your project by breaking up the whole project into a series of little deliverable bits. And you could also outline the roles of any delivery partners and their responsibilities, as well as the team roles if you're working with a group. In your answer to question 5, you should briefly outline who else is involved in the delivery of the program and why they are the right people. You can always add fuller information about your team members as part of the support materials. You should articulate why your collaborators have the right creative or technical skills that are relevant or significant in the art form and the area of practice for your project. To address criteria 3, you also need to provide a break-even budget. And a break-even budget is where your income matches your expenditure. We strongly recommend that you provide a detailed breakdown of your income and expenses to assist the assessors understand your project. Your budget should include all the income that you may generate from your project, such as ticket or entry fees, any other grants such as local government or Creative Australia funding, or any in-kind service and goods you've been able to get. Don't forget you must have at least 10% of income from a source other than the Create New South Wales grant. Individuals and groups can apply for funding from $10,000 up to $75,000 and organisations from $20,000 to $100,000. In your budget, you should also outline all the costs involved to deliver your project. Your application should demonstrate fair payment for artists and arts and cultural workers that is aligned with recognised awards, guidelines and industry standards. A list of links to industry rates can be found in the ACFP glossary. Also a note, if you're hiring musicians, any events or activities that receive funds from Create New South Wales must pay at least $250 per call per musician, and this is based on a 3-hour call as set out in the Live Performance Award and endorsed by the Fair Work Ombudsman. You should also consider and include superannuation on any wages or fees that you pay, and be mindful of any other on-costs such as loading or workers' comps that may be required under any relevant legislation or awards. There is further information on this in the frequently asked questions section of the resources page. You can apply for funding for the other areas shown on the slide. For example, you may have costs associated with hiring spaces. Remember, some of these you may be able to get in kind. There may also be costs involved with travel and accommodation that are essential for delivering the program, or costs associated with providing mentorship or workshops. You may have costs for materials to deliver the program and costs associated with marketing and promotion, such as advertising or printing. You should also consider if there are any costs that will make the project more accessible for your artists and audiences, such as captioning or providing an Auslan interpreter for a deaf artist or deaf audiences, as well as costs with observing First Nation protocols and protecting Indigenous cultural and intellectual property. They might include some costs like community consultation or a fee for an elder. There might also be costs with the administration of the grant. For example, if you are using a funding administrator or auspicer, they will have a fee. And there might be costs around insurance. And if you are doing the administration yourself, you may wish to put in a small amount to cover your time and expenses. Overall, your income and expenses should be realistic and accurately reflect the scope and scale of your project. By providing details in your budget, it really helps the assessors understand how you came up with the numbers. And remember, final reminder that you must provide at least 10% of your income from other sources other than the grant, but that can be in cash or in kind. Once the applications have been received and the round closed, all the applications are checked that they are eligible. Your application is then assessed by the art form that you select for your application. There are 10 Create New South Wales art form boards with up to 20 members on each board, and they include professional artists, producers, cultural workers, and leaders from across the sector. The art form boards assess all applications to the Arts and Cultural Funding Program. For further information about the boards and the specific art forms that each board supports, you can find that on the Create New South Wales website at the Arts Board's Frequently Asked Questions. Art form board members will then score each application based against the assessment criteria. Note that individuals and groups are assessed separately from organisations in this round. An assessment meeting is then held for each of the boards to come together and determine the final application rankings and the recommendation for funding. Create New South Wales finalises these recommendations with the number of applications by art form, the available budget, the geographical description of the highest rank applications, and of course the strategic priority areas. The Minister for the Arts is the final decision maker. Some checklists. The applicants are encouraged to read the guidelines thoroughly before starting an application. Also read the frequently asked questions on the resources page on the Create New South Wales website. The FAQs will be updated continuously with answers to common questions throughout the application open period. So if you have a question, your answer may be there. Save your progress regularly in Smarty Grants. You might choose, alternatively, to download the form as a PDF and then work through the answers in a Word document so that you can then edit them more easily and then cut and paste into Smarty Grants. Also, don't wait for the last minute to start your application. The best applications are written, then edited, then re-edited to make sure they are as clear as they can be and that they address the criteria. Also prepare uploads that you may want, so supporting documents or letters of support or something on your art form. Make sure your support materials that you choose to upload are directly relevant to the application. For example, a group signed collaboration agreement would be helpful, or an invitation for a group or some company to develop or present a workshop. And please leave plenty of time to submit before the deadline, which is 2 p.m. on the 25th of May, 2026. Okay, some tips. Make sure you address the criteria when answering each question, and answer each question using clear and plain language. You can always ask someone who doesn't know what your project is about if what you have written is actually clear. Don't rely on AI to provide the answers for your application. It becomes very clear when that happens. And check all the available resources, especially the FAQs and the glossary, as they are updated on a regular basis. Prepare early, and if you can, submit early. You don't want to be caught out by the internet suddenly going down on the day you're trying to submit at 1:55. Access support is available on request, and these include things like a Word version of the application form. You can do translation support online. We can do some dictation support, and there's an option to answer questions using audio or visual. And of course, there is the National Relay Service available for applicants who are deaf or hard of hearing. And if you need any additional help, Create New South Wales can provide information on the guidelines and interpretation of the guidelines, but we cannot provide feedback on draft applications or on your project. If you have questions, again, please check the resource page, nsw.gov.au/ACFP. This is your one stop to find everything related to the program, including the FAQs, glossaries, common terms, webinars such as this one for the other programs. Thanks for taking time out of your day to listen to this, and best of luck with your application.